This is my knife block. Fairly standard sort of knife block. But these are my knives. You can see the dilemma. I've got more knives than storage space in the block. Common sense suggests I need a new knife block. My kitchen cupboards are Jarrah, so I was thinking Jarrah would be a good thing to make the knife block out of. Okay, so I've got my knives laid out, ready to be categorised. At the moment they're just pulled out by the sets they were in. These three came in a case together. These were all in a knife block. Their cook's knife's since gone missing and I'd replaced it with this knife. So that's kind of a loner. Just bought that one, and I bought that one a little while back, late last year. These three I've had for ages, but again, they're all individual knives. That really is a super cheap piece of junk, but man, it's lasted years. It's still super sharp. I've never had to sharpen it. It still works. You can hack through ice with the back of it. And I thought the handle would break or chip, but it never did. You can even chuck this in the dishwasher, it comes out sharp. So it's earned some respect from me, and it gets its own spot in the knife block now if I could make a big enough block. So what I'm going to do now is measure them all in their groups and find out what's the maximum width and maximum length in that group, because I don't want them to fit each knife specifically in the block. I want the block to be universal, so when eventually one of these knives dies, like these ones will do very soon I should imagine, I can chuck them, I can go out and buy a better quality knife like I have done over here and replace it, and it should fit in the block because the block should be ever so slightly oversized or made to a slightly larger size. So here we go. Okay, so this is what I've designed in Fusion 360 for my knife block, and you'd probably be able to see it a bit better if I turn some of the layers off. Each one of these layers, or components as they call them in Fusion 360, is a slice of wood with a channel cut out of it for its respective knife. Now I've ditched the little tiny knives that we had earlier. They can go and sit in the drawer in the space where the bigger knives were. Still free up drawer space and get the big knives out onto the whole thing. So yeah, each one of these, I'll just pare it down to one, and then you can see, or maybe two, here we go. If I spin that round, the idea is just to have a slice of Jarrah, obviously made of more than one piece, and then route out a channel for each knife, and then it'll butt up against the flat edge of this, sealing it in basically. Well, not this piece, another piece, but you get the idea. And then so on. The next piece has a channel for the knife, and so on and so on, until you've got a whole block like that. On the bottom of it, I'm planning on cutting I think I've made that a 10-degree angle down there, which isn't a lot. I just wanted a gentle pitch on it. I thought they're very long knives, so I don't want it leaning forward too far, and I don't want to have to put supports under it if I can get away with it. Down in this area, I might have to put a triangle if I was to make it too big, just to give it the extra support as it leans over on the bench. So 10 degrees, it's almost going to be vertical when it's sitting there, but just enough of an angle to pull the knives out. That's the plan. Over the years I've used a lot of recycled timber. So one of the things I've found really invaluable is a metal detector, and try and find things like nails and screws before you run the wood through your saw or planer. So I'm just going to test this. Now if I go here, I should imagine, can you see that? There's our metal. So just to show you what I mean. pretty sensitive. And for that reason, I basically have to stick the piece of wood or sit the piece of wood out in mid-air in order to be able to sense it, or to be able to run it through the metal detector. So what I do is I stick one end on the workbench and I hold the other end out here. I grab the metal detector. And slowly run it over the piece of wood. Now I've heard that Jarrah dust can be rather nasty, so I've got my air filter up and running. Okay, I don't know how well you're going to be able to hear me because I am wearing a dust mask. So anyway, I've put some chalk on the surface here that I'm about to plane. I'll flip that over and plane that side flat, then use that as a reference against the back fence of the plane to make sure that that's also flat and at 90 degrees to the first face. Then of course I use those as a reference. So the chalk there is just to make sure that I do take wood off across the whole piece. Obviously if I don't, it's not flat yet. So here we go. So you probably see the chalk. Here we go. A bit more in the middle and a little bit in the corners to make sure I get them. So yes, we've removed all the chalk, that's good. We can now use that as a reference face to plane the next one. Some chalk on the next face. And we'll mark this one so we don't lose track of it. A reference. Alright, now we just need to check that. Awesome, square, excellent. Alright, so I've got to do that a few more times yet, but I won't bore you with that. I'll see you at the next step. These pieces of Jarrah are too thick to be broken down on the table saw, so I'm going to have to put them through on the bandsaw. See what I mean? Okay, by chopping these pieces down into smaller bits ready to be joined, I've released a lot of tension within the wood. So Jarrah's fairly stable, so it won't change too much, but it is going to change shape slightly. It's going to warp or twist or buckle, hopefully not much, and hopefully not twist. I hate twist. But anyway, yep, so I'm going to let those sit in the workshop overnight, just get used to the weather. I'll go and do some other stuff for the rest of my day, and we'll come back to this tomorrow and plane them down nice and even, join them up, and start cutting our pieces. So here we are, it's more than 24 hours later. The wood's been able to just sit here and acclimatise overnight and release its inattentions. So anyway, it hasn't moved much. The pieces I've tested so far by putting them on the table saw and looking for light under them, I've been lucky so far. That's 3 bits and I'll keep going. But yeah, obviously there'll be some replaning and then a bit of thicknessing through the thicknesser, and then a bit of gluing. All right, here we go. So I've got the first batch of timber ready for glue up. So let's give that a bit of gluing. Got my favourite clamps ready to go. Well, favourite at the moment because they're new. My glue, exterior glue is getting a bit empty though, so I do need to top that up. So I'll probably fast forward or skip this bit. Oh, there, like that. Just use that. Okay. Okay, so I've got my pieces ready to be glued together. I've got some exterior grade glue. I'm using exterior grade because I'm going to wipe this down with a damp cloth from time to time. And I don't want it to fall apart. Okay, so let's go. Now, it's the middle of summer here, so things are drying quick. So even though this isn't a super fast drying glue, it's drying super fast. So speed is of the essence. Right, just going to make 6 more of these. Okay, so we've completed the glue up of the panels that are going to make up the knife block, and I've organised them from thickest on the left all the way to the thinnest on the right, and the right to thinnest panels will be our outside pieces, like so. The reason they're organised from thickest to thinnest is that's going to be the easiest way to pull them through the planer. Oh, if we're slow enough we might make it. So there we go, over in the background there you can see my planer. That's all the boards or panels planed now to even thickness, except for the 2 thin ends, which are down, where are we? Down this end. Those 2 of course are thinner because they're the ends. So the next stage now is we've got parallel sides. So we've got parallel sides on this thing. Now we're going to need to make sure the edges are all square, not only to each other but also to these faces. So these faces are our reference. So I'm over at the table saw and I'm just going to trim off the edges of these panels I've made now, just to square up the edges. So, next step is to space the outer portion of the bit, or the edge of the router bit, 20 millimeters away from the fence, so as our first cut's happening inside of this area. Okay, so I have a little Veritas setup block kit. And I was hoping to use this fella in it, but sadly it's 25mm across, not 20mm. But, a bit of serendipity, these two little 16mm spacers, which are 16mm that way, happen to be, well, you get 10 before, but anyway, that's pretty darn close to 10, I'll accept that. 10mm thick. So I'm going to use two of those, just to double check, just so as we're happy with what we're doing. Oh yeah, pretty happy with it, that's 20mm. Okay, so we're going to use those to space our route a bit away from the fence. Okay. You might notice that the groove at this end is a bit of a different shape. Why is that so? That is because that one there isn't for a knife, that one's for a pair of scissors, which have a little bolt on them, so that allows that to sit in there like so, little bolt and all. I thought of having it just knife shaped, but then it would sit up, well, like this. And from some angles, I don't think that would look very good. There we go. Alright, now to set it for a mitre of 10 degrees at the bottom. So there she is, all glued up and clamped up, and we'll catch up with that a little bit later. So all that will be left to do then, once this is finished, is sand all the edges smooth, round the corners off, and oil the block. That's it. And so now the next step is to sand this all the way up to 240 grit. After much deliberation, I've decided to go with a 6.35mm radius round over bit. Why? Because of the three sizes of round over bit I have, it's about the right size. So I've got my knife block all done, all glued together, sanded down, and I'm up to the point where I'm going to oil it. So what I'm oiling it with is a bit of orange oil, because it's food safe and I have to have it. So there you go. That's it. I'm quite pleased with the way it worked out. It's very shiny. I've left my tripod down in the workshop, so I'm doing this by hand. Look at that, that's lovely. It's very heavy, so it's not going to shift anywhere of its own accord. In fact, just turning it like that on that placemat is difficult. One thing I would do differently next time, or well, if there was ever need to be a next time, I don't think there will need to be, I would put dowels between the laminations to assist in alignment when for final assembly. I got some slight shifts up and down and backwards and forwards that I tried to eliminate during clamping, but sort of, I don't know, snuck in, I guess, as they were left. Perhaps some of my clamping pressure was at the wrong angle. But anyway, had I have had some sort of dowel, top and bottom perhaps for each laminate, that would have not been a problem. So that would be the only thing I would advise to do differently. Otherwise, this is a great way to build a knife block. And if you're going to build one, I wish you all the very best with it. It's a great project. Enjoy, and bye for now.